Thank you, Madam President, and colleagues, thank you very much. I have listened to all of the comments today, and certainly it has been a passionate discussion with a lot of relevant points. You know, we all have stories. We all have a lens that we put and evaluate things through, whether we want to have it or not, we do. Our stories and our experiences do really matter. You know, I know that, oh, well, by the way, I rise in very strong support of ACA 5. You know, 209 may tell you to be colorblind, I know others have said this, or gender neutral, but that just isn't the reality. It's not the reality. And that's why we debate these things. That's why the Constitution was debated. The Bill of Rights came out. We have to continually look at our experiences in society and what is going on in today's world from which to determine what the metrics will be. You know, I have experienced, certainly as an LGBTQ member of that community, I've experienced discrimination. I've experienced discrimination as a woman. But I will tell you the worst discrimination I have experienced in my life was as a poor person, a person that comes from a very blue-collar, working-class background, an Appalachian, a Southerner, without a lot of opportunity. And I knew I was different. I can only imagine what it would feel like. I can only imagine, because I don't know, if I had to add race or an ethnic component to all of those other factors. So I don't know what that is like. But I'll tell you, I do have the experience of having grown up poor, a woman, coming out as a lesbian at age 18. And so I know what it means to have to understand survival and how to be careful and how to navigate the world. But I got a good education thanks to some of the rules that were in place that allowed me to get grants, and I got scholarships. I worked very hard. But I didn't have the same opportunities as many of the kids that went to school with me that lived on the right side, obviously, of the tracks. But I got a good education. I got to college with a lot of support. And today, I'm the President Pro Tem of the Senate of California, the 5th largest economy in the world. I'd love to share with you the story of my sister, who took a different path and who didn't somehow get the opportunities that I was fortunate enough to have. She went in the military. She's a proud veteran, as was her husband, now deceased. But her experience in the world is very different because people perceive her not to be a white woman of privilege. She still has a lot of the issues from the blue-collar, working-class, poor community that we came from. And let me tell you, she's treated differently. She's treated differently. And she acts differently. She would never think to ask for something that she deserves. And I feel the difference because people treat me like the white woman of privilege I seem to be until they get my accent halfway through. But I only share my story because I think that the tensions today exist because we haven't addressed the issues, be they race, gender, orientation, or economic opportunity. You hear a lot of economic opportunity and equity throughout all of this because that, you know, being poor and economically disadvantaged crosses all lines. You know, I had some really pretty basic comments, but I wanted to just throw that out there. And by the way, you know, diversity does not just happen. It takes work, hard work, focused work. And I know this because I think I'm a pretty good person. I like to think that I am accepting and open, and because of my experiences that I am better, right? And then I took that implicit bias survey. And boy, did I learn a few things about myself. I was so depressed and disappointed. But it was a reminder to me that I have work to do. So you can imagine how hard it is to come up with parameters and guidelines and rules and to figure out how we promote an equitable playing field. How do we do that without offending each other? You know, how do we do that? Because in our attempts to be kind or one-on-one or personal, we still have issues and problems because we all come from a different perspective. We all look through a different lens. It just is. And so we're going to continue to debate these things, but you know, the tensions exist because we've got work to do. And the only way we can do it as a democracy is to have the discussion and figure out what needs to happen. So now I'll get to my basic points, which clearly are not as passionate, but very relevant, I hope. It's been made clear in our discussion that ACA 5 will give voters the opportunity to decide if California should allow race and gender to be considered in college admissions, government hiring, and government contracting. Not the only consideration, not the determining consideration, just one of the considerations in the holistic view. In 1996, Proposition 209 prohibited this policy. But in California and Californians, we have changed over the last few decades. It's time to allow voters, to allow Californians to reevaluate the policy, the same way they did 4 years ago when voters repealed another relic from the 90s, Prop 227, and restored bilingual education because it was the right thing to do. The state's education system, careers in public service, fair public procurement policies have been proven to be extremely powerful, as my colleague over there pointed out, to build and maintain a strong middle class, something many of us aspired to. ACA 5 will ensure all communities have a level playing field to compete for those opportunities. Colleagues, COVID-19 and the pandemic has further exposed health disparities. We'll talk about that in another piece of legislation being offered in communities of color. Systemic racism continues to be a stain on our nation, however hard we strive and try. And the current economic downturn is increasing existing inequities. As we work in this legislature to address those issues, we have to take every chance we can to promote opportunity and justice. They're aspirations, and we can continue always to aspire to those goals and the best nature. As our colleague Dr. Weber has noted, Proposition 209 has hindered public policy, thwarted opportunity, and maintained economic disparity long enough. It's time to give voters a chance to right this wrong. I ask for your aye vote on ACA 5. Thank you, Madam.